Well, I think it's all about who's using those buildings and who's using that built environment, that infrastructure. How you're making their lives better. That focus, I think the focus is shifting towards that. It needs to be that.
Hello everyone and welcome to FutureX, a podcast by Martin Hearn, Event Director, Futurebuild, and co-host Dr. Oliver Jones, Research Director at Ryder Architecture. FutureX will bring together some of the brightest minds and some of the most disruptive thinkers and innovators to transform the construction industry and build a FutureX community of like-minded people that can begin to make a real change. We really hope you enjoy the series.
Hello and welcome to FutureX. I'm Martin Hearn, Event Director of Futurebuild, and I'm really pleased to be once again joined by my co-host, Dr. Oliver Jones from Ryder Architecture. Oliver, we're back. We've had a little break. What have you been up to?
Oh, mate, what have I been up to? Well, I've had a baby. Not me personally, but Alison's had a baby.
Congratulations.
So, we've got plenty of sleepless nights going on. And also we've had Futurebuild.
We definitely have. That's like my little baby,
Oh, mate, I've got to say, it was amazing. It was full of energy. It was absolutely the place to be for those 3 days. But man, it was exhausting. There was just so much to see. There was so many people to talk to. And also I had to negotiate some time out of the house, given the new arrival, to come and experience it again. And it didn't disappoint, back in the flesh after lockdown. I think it was a great show.
Brilliant. And thank you. You obviously hosted our big innovation pitch, which really showcased 6 of the best bits of innovation at the show.
I was so surprised. I say surprised. I was really happy about the level of innovation and the number of startups and the energy that was there for the big innovation pitch and those companies. There was so much excitement around them. I think it really did them justice and did them credit in the products that they've come up with and the innovations that they've been developing. And I think everybody was really pleased, and it was incredibly well attended, the big innovation pitch.
Yeah, it was probably one of the standout conference sessions for me as well. And actually, talking about innovation, this is sort of leading into our next series, series 2 of our podcast, which is firmly going to focus on innovation. And actually, right on the back of the heels of Bayes confirming they're rising the UKRI's budget. They're going to invest over 25 billion over the next 3 years. And we've got 3 amazing guests. People are probably the 3 people that are leading this for the built environment. So we're going to be in a minute talking to Mike Pitts, who's the Deputy Challenge Director at Innovate UK, alongside Keith Waller, who's the Programme Director at Construction Innovation Hub, and then Stacey, who's the Challenge Director at UKRI.
I don't think you could have 3 people who are more influential in the construction innovation space in one space. I mean, I'm partially waiting for this microphone to melt as soon as they come on, because there's some serious big dogs in innovation there that are going to be joining us, and I'm really, really excited to talk to them about, to Keith about the work that they've been doing with the Construction Innovation Hub, what's been going on, but also what's coming down the line. And the same with Sam and Mike. Those guys are really at the forefront of seeing what's coming through in terms of UK innovation and construction innovation, because they're dealing with those grant and funding applications all the time. I can't wait for this one.
Brilliant. Well, let's get them on.
Hi guys, thanks for joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure to have 3 powerhouses of construction innovation in the UK with us on the call. We've got Sam Stacey from Innovate UK, Keith Waller from Construction Innovation Hub, and Mike Pitts joining us from Innovate UK today. So it's absolutely fantastic to as I say, to have you all on the call. It'd be really good just for you guys to give us a bit of an introduction. Maybe starting with Sam, what it is that you guys are working on at Innovate UK, how you're engaging with the construction sector at the moment.
So it all dates back 4 or 5 years to the industrial strategy, and the construction industry got a sector deal with a tremendous contribution from the government to improve the construction industry. So we've been using this 170 million that we got from the government to make some fundamental changes across the construction sector, and working really closely with government to use those procurement levers to help encourage the industry to take up these new approaches at scale across the industry. And we're coming to the end of this Transforming Construction Challenge now, and it's a very exciting time. We've produced some fantastic results. We've really exceeded what we thought was possible in terms of improvements to the industry. And it's this critical time now where the industry can pick up and run with these outputs and get some great benefits from them.
Keith, what about yourself with Construction Innovation Hub?
So the Construction Innovation Hub is one of the projects that's been funded through the construction sector deal. So we've received around £75 million of that 170. And really we've brought together the Manufacturing Technology Centre, Building Research Establishment and Cambridge University's Centre for Digital Build Britain to try and drive and enable that change. We are not, as the Construction Innovation Hub, looking to be a market player. We're trying to enable the market. So we're trying to develop technical solutions that meet the ambitions of the challenge, work with government to try and shape the policy and regulatory environment, and work with industry to try and build capability and capacity so they are able to respond to the ambitions of the sector deal and deliver better outcomes from the investment we make in the built environment.
Absolutely. And Mike, you're part of Innovate UK, so tell us what you've been working on as well.
Good morning. So I've been in Innovate UK for 10 years and worked on a lot of different programmes. And the great fun with this one, in Transforming Construction, is that we really tried this time to think about what happens when the R&D funding ends. We thought quite a lot about the culture change and the barriers that are holding the sector back from transforming. And that's why we've worked very hard to storytell around every single investment that we've made. And I've been leading on some of that work along with working closely with the hub to make sure that the right kind of ecosystems put into place. So we're moving into a kind of deployment fusion phase, as they call it in innovation language. And the idea there is to make sure that the kind of knowledge from what we've achieved is shared as widely as possible and understood by as many people as possible. And so we've got this incredible story catalogue. If anyone wants to kind of go and see that, the overview of everything, UKRI.org/TCC.
You mentioned the innovation ecosystem there, Mike. It's probably a really good thing for the listeners of the podcast just to understand that ecosystem a bit more. So we've got Innovate UK. We are regularly doing work as rider architecture out in other regions around the world, in Vancouver and in Australia, and extolling the virtues of a really rich construction innovation ecosystem within the UK. There's a lot of parts to it though. So, can you guys tell us a bit about how those parts fit together? We've got the accelerators, we've got the Construction Innovation Hub, we've got Innovate UK. So for our listeners that maybe aren't as familiar with that innovation ecosystem and just how strong it is, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, we've been working for a long time in the UK to make the system more coherent, and that's an ongoing process. So Innovate UK is part of UK Research and Innovation, which brings together us and the Research Council, so all the research funding, which is recognised globally as world class. Our research base is incredible, but what we need to do is get better at pulling through the kind of high quality research we do and turning that into real difference for business. And that's kind of where Innovate UK steps in. Innovate UK has developed a series of different kind of products, I suppose, so kind of different kind of methods to overcome the barriers every sector faces. So there's things like catapults, and part of the catapult network is involved in the Construction Innovation Program. And they're there to help scaling of solutions. We've got the knowledge transfer network to connect up and transfer knowledge from one sector to another. And that's what we've done so beautifully, I think. A real core innovation, Innovate UK territory here with the Construction Innovation Hub is rather than try and force fit it into something, we've created something that we kind of needed, a kind of national R&D program that could put in one room the kinds of people that need to work on this challenge. So it's not just construction, it's the best from high value manufacturing. All the people who have been working on those kinds of challenges in other sectors, the best of digital, the best of renewable energy, and understand how to integrate this stuff at a building level. So it might look complicated, that's because we try to develop the right answer for the challenge that we're working on while keeping it coherent.
Sam?
I had a lot of experience working with Innovate UK when I was at Skanska, and I really saw the value of what Innovate UK can do. It provides connections through Innovate UK and the associated KTN. It provides connections between different businesses, and then that little bit of funding that comes in to just get things over the line and enable companies to come together and develop solutions that, frankly, they would have found too risky to do without that kind of support. So, over a period of probably 8 years, I did a whole series of collaborations with Innovate UK, and I just saw terrific value coming from that, being able to bring solutions to the construction industry.
Keith? And I think the ecosystem that the UK has is very strong, and I don't think historically the construction industry has levered that as well as it might. And obviously, despite employing around 3 million people and being 7-8% of GDP, it tends to do less R&D as a sector than other parts of the economy. And part of the reason for that is that many construction projects are bespoke and non-repeated. The margins are very tight within the industry. So the industry really has been innovating to try and differentiate itself. So it's been tactical innovation for a project rather than strategic innovation for the market. And one of the things the Transforming Construction Challenge has done is it's brought together government and industry to start looking at some of those longer term strategic things. How do we build in a way that's more sustainable, lower carbon? How do we drive modern, productive, digital manufacturing approaches into that? And some of these things are very difficult to justify on a single project, which is how the market has tended to operate, quite transactionally. So looking at how we make value-based decisions, how we shape a policy environment that encourages people to think about developing solutions that can be deployed across multiple projects, multiple parts of the sector. So moving from tactical project-based innovation to strategic market-based innovation is a real success story from the Transforming Construction Challenge.
Yeah, we were obviously really honoured to have Lee Rowley, the construction minister, at Futurebuild just a few weeks ago, and we obviously toured him around the show. And he talked a lot about that he wants the government, or how the government wants the UK to be the most efficient, technologically advanced green construction sector in the world. Can you talk about how the TCC has helped take huge steps towards that?
I think the UK has started, as in starting the Transforming Construction Challenge from a very strong base, and it's a very interesting question how we got into such a good position. I worked for a multinational construction company for a few years, Skanska, and I was amazed to see just how advanced already, I'm talking sort of 2010 to 2015, already the UK construction industry was really punching above its weight in terms of its capability. And I think that's been driven by a good deal of government support, particularly in the digital area over many years. And now we've been able to, really accelerate that change. And I think we're in a fantastic position. I mean, literally, we are the best country in the world in terms of the sophistication at the higher end of a construction industry. That's great for British society, but it's also great for British companies in the sector.
So what we kind of discovered was that the system. I mean, I'm coming as an outsider, so I'm not from the construction sector. Non-innovation expert. I'm actually a chemist, and I'm amazed how well and how fast this sector will adopt innovation if it works. Real pragmatists, and what we kind of discovered is the system itself had evolved. This is globally into one that just delivers the cheapest product. And the shift we're trying to see with the whole system is everybody recognised there's a problem with it. No one's fault in any one sense. But the system itself needed to shift together. And what the challenge has done is work with the entire system. And the government as Sam says, must take a huge amount of credit here. They're committed to changing the way they procure, and stating that things like digital technologies and modern methods have to be used. We have to take a value-based approach rather than just worrying about getting the cheapest output. It's getting the right outcomes. moving everything together in that way, and that's where we've worked all the way along. Everybody's bought into it. The shared vision has been so strong. I've been incredibly impressed. It's been so clear that all of the kind of seniors above us just recognise it, understand it, and completely applaud it. And the sector really, really should look at itself and be very, very pleased with what it's achieved, and keep going.
Yeah, I think that's right, Mike. And I think one of the areas where perhaps there's been a barrier in the past that seems to be bursting through, picking up your point, Martin, about how do we drive that transformation. We've often seen quite laudable, high-level objectives from government around let's increase social value, let's improve biodiversity, let's drive a path to net zero. But those policy objectives haven't regularly and consistently translated into how projects set out their requirements, or how clients have engaged with the market, or how procurement has been undertaken. So a lot of the work that we've been doing in the hub has been trying to shape that ecosystem to make it easier for clients to make informed, confident choices that these approaches will deliver that whole life value, will support those broader policy objectives, and at the same time, crucially, support UK businesses to innovate, to grow, to be profitable in responding to that. So we're trying to take that the high-level strategic intent that government has set out and enable that to be converted into something that really makes a difference to industry and really makes a difference to the outcomes that the sector produces.
I guess picking up on your point there, Keith, around making a difference to industry, I think for anyone listening that might be considering, what transformation has been brought about and how is this transforming industry? And from our perspective at Ryder, it's been phenomenal engaging with CIH and also Innovate UK. I think there's some key lessons that we've learned along the way, and some key questions that we've probably tried to ask of ourselves and of how we're going to transform the construction sector, and how the work that you guys are doing is going to enable that. I guess the first thing is around how we build. So we've been really ingrained and working alongside with the great work of CIH on the platform systems and MMC, and Innovate UK have funded the Aquila project, which is phenomenal in terms of understanding how we can better optimize site equipment using building information modeling. So that how bit has been really fundamental for us working with you guys. The what element has been there as well. So, what do we build with? We've been doing an awful lot around advanced materials, and again, Mike and Sam, you've been instrumental in supporting companies like Thermulon and Sfera, who are developing carbon neutral and carbon negative fire safe insulation and block work using waste plastics to support the circular economy. So the final bit as well, which is probably one of the most important, is why for me, and that's the social value space, and the whole procuring for value sort of rhetoric, and being involved from very early days with the Construction Innovation Hub and the Value Toolkit work has been something that's really changed the way we think as a business, and the way we interact with our partners. So we can totally see the benefit of this innovation ecosystem. I guess my question to you guys is, looking back at the last 4 years in terms of the Transforming Construction Challenge, what were the highlights for each of you?
Well, if I can kick off there, I mean, one of the sort of highlights for me is how quickly both government and industry embraced the opportunity. I had set out on this in this role about 4 years ago, thinking we would be doing quite a lot of work internally, and maybe at the end of it saying here's the outputs. But actually, what we realised very, very quickly is that to be successful, to have impact, we need to bring in government policymakers, we need to bring in the clients and bring in industry to go on the journey with us. We wouldn't be able to produce the scale and quality of the outputs if we were doing it just by ourselves. And even if we did, and we were able to, we wouldn't be able to land it with clients or have that support from industry. So one of the highlights for me is that collaborative spirit that's happened, with us and government, and with us and industry and government itself. So government policy used to be something that was done to industry, and now it's something that's developed with industry. Things like the construction playbook, there was a huge amount of industry input into that. So there's a much greater understanding and collaborative spirit between government, clients, policymakers and the industry. And being able to harness that has been the absolute highlight for me. I really thought, it would be difficult to land some of these principles and to get people engaged, but it's actually been much easier. And I just wish we'd started a bit earlier and been more ambitious to try and get that almost from day one to really sort of maximise the opportunity this funding has brought.
Mike?
Well, for me, it's always exciting when you get everybody who's got, this is innovation, really. You get everybody who's got some part of the answer in the same room together, and suddenly realise between them they've got all the answers. And it's what's been most energising for me is to see high value manufacturing experts with construction people, digital guys in the room saying, let's rethink some of the process you've got here. Because what we're really talking about with a lot of this is rethinking the construction process to take out all those steps that add cost but don't add value. And that means, in a lot of cases, in the first point, just adopting a more standardised process. And in some projects, there's very, 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 very successful companies putting their hands up and going, we don't actually have a process. The manufacturing guys coming in and going, what's this? It's a lot of paperwork, Now let's get this sorted out. And it's such low-hanging fruit. And the leap that some of these businesses have had from just really thinking through everything properly with that perspective that, the kind of guys that can still optimize after all this time, the way airplanes work or the way, sports cars are put together, applying their thinking to the construction process has been amazing. But the bit that really makes me delighted as someone working on this program is just how much is out there now. The outputs of the program are being applied to tens of billions of pounds worth of real world projects. There's people living in homes that have been built using methods that we've pioneered. There's office blocks going up, the world's first kit and parts that are net zero. We've got designs out there for what a net zero school would look like. And as Keith said, it's got the whole hospital program going. We're going to build all these new hospitals and we're going to do it this way, and we're going to get better outputs because of it, faster, at lower cost, greater productivity. That's the real joy for me, is to see the real world application.
Sam?
Yeah, so Keith quite rightly flagged up this fantastic collaboration between government and industry and indeed academia. And, I know from many years in the industry just how much you care about what the clients are asking for. So to have this government procurement shifted towards, really encouraging, mandating the techniques that we're talking about is a fantastically powerful force. And we didn't know that was going to happen, but I think that was fantastic to see. So construction playbook, TIP roadmap to 2030, other bits of government procurement, really seeing that come through, and that absolutely wakes up the industry, wakes up these companies, and gets them on board with thinking, well, we really have to do this now. There is no choice. We're going to be left out of the party unless we do these things. So that is fantastic. I'd also like to flag out a project that I just particularly love, which is the Hyperpower project. So these are hollow, precast, low carbon piles, and this is one of these things. Everyone is kind of board piles, big lumps of concrete in the ground. Nothing you can do about that. But this consortium, Keltbray and Arup and others, come together to create a whole new type of pile, vastly less carbon emissions, much more efficient. You don't have to dig so much earth out because you've got this clever system to create some impressions into the hole so that you really grip the pile really grips into the earth. The hollow wall, you can use pipes, you can exchange heat, so that can provide heat and cool to buildings. Just lovely, an example of what Mike said, a number of organisations coming together and just finding better solutions, and that's what is so delightful about, there are so many examples I could mention, but it's delightful about what we've stimulated. I mean, all credit to all the organisations. We're a facilitator, but so much credit to the organisations.
We've talked about change quite a lot, and the need or the willingness of the industry to change and do things differently. But I suppose in the 4 years since the TCC launched, it's been a time of major change. For all of us, we've had not just COVID, we had COP26. A huge focus in on net zero, especially in the housing side of things. We've still got a housing crisis as well. What a time to be running the TCC and try and bring those changes in. How have you stayed relevant and reacted to those changes, Sam?
I think the marvellous thing, and I don't know whether this is luck or judgment, but I think the marvellous thing is that we've had answers for all the sort of new challenges and priorities that have emerged during our time. I would say we probably started out with a primary focus on productivity, which remains important. But then, COVID comes along and hits us, and the feedback that we've got from all the organisations that we're collaborating with is where they've been applying our techniques, they're more robust and resilient to the disruptions of COVID. COP26, suddenly a more focus on sustainability and carbon emissions, and we got answers for that too. It's in our it's in our portfolio, it's in our outputs, and levelling up has kind of risen up the agenda in the time that we've been operating. And again, we can contribute hugely to the levelling up agenda by moving the high value jobs away from construction sites into parts of the country where there is more opportunity and need to provide jobs.
I think that, you take things like value toolkits that you referred to earlier. So within that, there's the capability to consider social value, biodiversity, carbon, and jobs that throughout the country. So having a tool there that says, well, actually, if these priorities are changing, here's how you can adapt to them. But I think it's also worth perhaps not trying to make the Transforming Construction Challenge take all the credit for how industry has responded. I mean, we've seen the Construction Leadership Council really step up to the plate in terms of the industry's response to COVID, and that served as well as just that direct benefit and impact from that also perhaps made government listen more to the sector and realise the sector had a voice it was worth listening to. So rather than reactively listening, they're proactively engaging. So we've seen Construction Leadership Council with their Construct Zero initiative that we tie in with. In that, we've seen the issues around how we address future skills with the challenges of Brexit. So being closely engaged with the Construction Leadership Council and being active within it has helped keep us relevant and make sure that we're aligned. What would be wrong is if we had the Construction Leadership Council going down one path, the hub and the challenge going down another path, and government going or looking the other way. Actually, those three things have come together very nicely, and we're seeing that amplification and reinforcement now, rather than just repeating parallel strands that aren't really delivering impact. So I think the Construction Leadership Council have played a really key role in drawing industry together, convening industry, and giving industry a powerful voice within government that's helped amplify the messages that are coming out from the challenge.
Great. Mike?
Well, I echo Keith. I think the level of collaboration that's happened has been fantastic, and I think if anything, it's got stronger. It was a good feature in a lot of our projects. We've got competitors now working together to say, let's solve some of the problems we have and go after a future market that's different, rather than fight over the old. And we've seen that a lot in the housing sector. We still don't have enough skilled workforce to deliver the homes we have. And one of our large flagship projects, the AI engagement, has seen a lot of that supply chain and some of the leading house builders in this country come together and show that they can build 30% more homes with the same skilled workforce, because you're making better use of the talent you have. You're scheduling better. You've not got roofers climbing up and down scaffolding because they're putting the roofing down on the ground and lifting it into place. So some of the support and the ideas that have come forward are thinking very much about that future, and very relevant to our crisis, and it starts to become something that goes into the rearview mirror.
Absolutely, and everybody spoke about collaboration and the importance of that, and almost the prescient nature of addressing some of the challenges that you guys have taken up within the Transforming Construction Challenge. And I guess from our perspective, something that's really quite interesting is that we've got really strong as the UK in terms of the connections and the collaborations, engaging with the accelerators and the catapults. But from an industry perspective, we're seeing some real value and some real interest from other areas of the world that have got very specific knowledge. So, we're working with guys in New York around Healthy Materials Lab, and up in British Columbia, real focus on the social value aspect of engaging with Indigenous communities, but also underrepresented communities, and all the way back over to Australia, where there's a massive push on marine biology and biotech and the impact that can have. And it kind of plays to what Mike was talking about earlier around the excitement that can be garnered when you get all of these people and thinkers into one space. We've done a really good job of getting the UK into some shape in that. Is there plans further down the line for how we might be engaging this global knowledge pool? Keith?
Well, there's certainly aspects of our programme where we're already working on quite a large and broad international reach. So that the digital programme, the global BIM networks that have been set up have been really helping to cement the UK's leading position in terms of BIM and its delivery throughout the world. We're also having a number of conversations with foreign governments around the value toolkit, for example. So we recognise that the value drivers that may exist in the UK will be different in South America or Australia or Canada or wherever it's going to be. But that's the beauty of the toolkit. It doesn't tell you what the answer is. It gives you the questions to ask and allows you to put your own value drives in there. So people are seeing the opportunity to deploy those sorts of tools to help deliver their own national portfolios. But of course, part of our mission is also within the Construction Innovation Hub and the challenge as a whole is to look at boosting exports. And of course, we expect to see some of these services being really valuable to some of our large multinational consultants who operate in these markets as well. But equally, one of the other areas we're quite keen to do is ensure that we're building capability and capacity in the UK to, for example, manufacture solutions here rather than import them. So in terms of international, there's a bit about opening up export opportunities, but there's also a bit of work really we need to do on import substitution, building that industrial capability and capacity here in the UK to service more of our domestic construction needs. So, I think the tools, the products, the processes that have been developed through the challenge are scalable internationally. We need to look at the right models that support UK businesses to take advantage of those in their international markets.
Yes, I think although exports have been very much part of our mission from the beginning, I think inevitably there's been a focus more locally within the UK so far, but we've absolutely got solutions and things to offer to a lot of other countries. So I think it's incumbent on all of us, and something I'm certainly enthusiastic about, to exploit opportunities to help across the ecosystems in other countries to further these aims. The same sorts of solutions are going to bring benefits wherever you're operating. Now, different countries, to some extent, have different construction industries that are structured in different ways, but to a large extent, also the lessons and the techniques are universal. So, I think that's something that we will see a lot of in the future, and I would encourage UK businesses to be confident about taking these solutions to other markets. It may be that for me certainly it was an eye opener to realise how relatively good the UK was, and I think that's a message that is worth sharing with people.
And we'll move on shortly to sort of what's next and the big challenges that you guys are addressing. It'd be good to hear from each of you though, very quickly, on what do you think are the big challenges that the UK construction industry is facing imminently?
Oh well, I'll jump straight in. I mean, I think I think skills is a massive issue. I mean, you know, we had Mark Farmer's report, Modernise or Die, a few years back, you know, looking at the construction labour model, and you know that was 2016, I think, and it's got a lot worse. We've had Brexit, we've got enormous challenges around decarbonisation. We have a massive skills issue. So the imperative to get more efficient with, you know, increase productivity and get more out of the same people. Mike's mentioned, you know, what we've seen with the CIH project is huge. I mean, my belief is that we could take easily half the labour out of producing what we produce, i.e. 50% improvement in productivity, and you know there are certainly instances where we can get a 90% improvement in productivity. I mean, there's vast opportunities to go out there, but hell, we've really got something coming at us, or we're already in the storm in terms of labour shortage.
Before we go to Keith on that one, Sam, what do you think the next steps for that are? I mean, that's a big question to put to you on the podcast, but in terms of, is it about engaging higher education? Is it about engaging industry groups? You know, what's a tangible sort of next step for trying to address that skills gap? Because it's a huge challenge.
It is a huge challenge. You know, to some extent, everybody's fishing in the same pool in terms of, you know, there's a labour shortage in the hospitality sector, in the retail sector. I know there's a lot of other things, but you know, I'm a champion of the construction industry. I think it's a fantastic industry. I think with the higher productivity comes the ability to pay people more generously, and construction industry offers this really meaningful work. You know, it offers work where you're really addressing the things that matter to people at the highest, you know, the highest level, the environmental challenges, the social benefit, this whole value spectrum. So I think, you know, let's all get out there and you know, we do it, get out there and say that it's an industry that is incredibly satisfying and rewarding to work in. So let's bring in the young people into the industry. Let's even encourage people who are more mature to you know, to change careers and move into our industry.
I've said it before, I'll say it again, I think it's the most exciting sector to work in by far. Keith, you wanted to come in on the big challenges that we're facing.
Well, I think in the short term, we're seeing an awful lot of inflationary pressure in the economy as a whole and in the sector particularly. So we've got labour shortages, which are driving wage inflation. We've got energy prices. We've got material shortages. We've got tariffs on goods and availability, which presents a risk to government and the ability to deliver its pipeline of projects and programmes if inflationary pressure is so high. So, and again, as Sam said earlier, you know, through the challenge, we've developed a number of the solutions to these problems. We're talking about, you know, delivering better outputs, better outcomes from a smaller capital investment in the first place. So one of the risks, I think, that in terms of how government and how industry respond to these inflationary pressures, one of the risks is they'll just revert to time, and it will be a race for cheapness and will delay the ability. And of course, that cheapness in terms of price is not the same as cheapness in terms of cost. You know, so we'll end up with things that don't move the industry forward. And I think it's really important, as you say, that this is a fantastic industry to work in. But when I joined 35 years ago, a lot of the jobs were analog, manual, and wasteful. You know, we're talking about what we're delivering through the challenge. We're talking about, you know, digital, productive, and sustainable jobs. So that enables us to attract, you know, the best talent into the industry. If we can start talking about the fantastic outcomes that the investment in the built environment delivers, rather than focusing on how we pour concrete or, you know, how we put up shuttering, we really need to focus on to attract that best talent into the industry. The fantastic outcomes in terms of improving social value, biodiversity, net zero, digital, all of those fantastic things. But if we focus too much on solving today's problems and ignore tomorrow's opportunities, we're just kicking the can down the road. So I think we really need to make sure that in addressing today's challenges, the inflationary pressure, we're not throwing out the opportunities to adopt digital manufacturing and attract that best talent into the sector for what is a fantastic career opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree. Before we go to Mike, just picking up on one of your points there, Keith, around inflationary pressure, and there's a lot more work going on, and we're involved in a lot more work just around how we improve resilience, resilience of our communities, energy resilience, resilience of our supply chains. And a lot of this seems to be pointing towards how does construction in particular support a developing circular economy? Is that something that you're sort of seeing, and what are your thoughts around resilience?
Oh, it's absolutely essential, and it's adaptability as well as resilience that some of these tools and techniques and processes offer. Now we've seen the sort of change in what our high streets have looked like over the last few years, and the way that people are now perhaps less likely to be working 5 days a week in the office. So you want that resilience and adaptability, climate resilience, and if you like, business adaptability, so we can repurpose buildings, which you can do in kits and parts much more easily than traditional stick-built environments. It makes the investment less risky for those people who are financing the projects as well. So we are looking at whole life, and we're looking at end of life, and we're looking at repurposing, and we're looking at resilience and adaptability in terms of the solutions we're developing. And of course, if we're able to clearly articulate how through what we're doing we're offering these better outcomes, rather than just describing the activities we're doing during construction, then I think we are helping to create an industry that's more innovative, more sustainable, more profitable, and is able to attract the best talent into it.
And Mike, last but not least, let's give us your big challenges.
Well, I think it builds on what both Keith and Sam have said. This is the big challenge is a culture shift. We've got to shift towards this one of saying we are here to deliver for society, and I think that's underway now. And it's easy it could be easy to drip back to that whole thing as how do we knock it out as cheaply as possible with the lowest amount of risk to us, and not worry about being part of this bigger thing that delivers benefit to society. Schools where pupils learn better because the building physics are right. Hospitals where people get better because the environment works. And just we know something like half of GDP is underpinned by the built environment. If you want to save the world, go and work in construction. It's got to be that kind of approach. So the processes we're talking about automate the dull stuff, so that the talent we have can focus on really maximising that delivery of value. I think this is where the manufacturing stuff's been so interesting, going back and looking at it quite deeply. A lot of people think lean was all about removing waste. It's not. Lean manufacturing is about ruthlessly focusing on value, getting rid of anything else that doesn't add to it. And that's what we've started to see here. And I think that's a much more exciting sector to be part of for everybody involved. And so it's that culture change to shift that way that's so important, and will deliver all these other things we've talked about. Lower amounts of waste, so we don't worry about materials and so forth. And I think the platform system concept opens up the opportunity to do circular economy in a much better way. When you've got standardised components, planning for how you reuse them in the future is a lot more than Sam mentioned. Even down to things like piling. Sam mentioned the hydropile project. The idea is you put sensors into these hollow piles to monitor how they perform, so you potentially can reuse them. Don't go digging another lot of piling when you know from monitoring it, it's perfectly fine for another 100 years.
I think from what you're saying around the culture shift, really echoes true. I think there's almost a light and a dark side of construction, and we've been over the last 4 to 5 years, we've been grappling with that. I think the work of CIH and of Innovate UK, and particularly the Transforming Construction Challenge, has brought a bit of integrity back to the sector, and I think sticking with what Keith has said around let's not default and let's not go back to the way that it was. I think the challenge from my perspective moving forward is how do we maintain that integrity and build upon it, and not lose our bottle at the last minute with regards to supporting those added value elements, Mike.
Well, that's how you attract talent. You've got the positive attitude. That's how you deliver on the value approach. This is how you become even more relevant. We talk so much about, government talk about build back better. The sector's primed to do it as long as it embraces this kind of culture shift that's underway, and deservedly so.
I think for me, what's been amazing to see is that obviously Bays have just confirmed. I think for me, what's been great to see is that obviously Bays have just confirmed rising the UKRI budget. You know, they're going to invest 25 billion now over the next 3 years, and that's really into world-class research and innovation across the UK. So, you know, what's coming? What's coming from you guys? And you know, how can we really? It feels like we need this call to industry or call to action as well.
Well, what's really been the success of the Transforming Consumption Challenge has been fantastic for the profile of the whole sector within UKRI, and we kind of think the kind of new build, which is where we focused on that shift is happening, and we wanted to carry on, and it's kind of the sector's opportunity to take that forward now. We're not going to give you more R&D money because you kind of know how to do it now. We've proven a lot of the things you've been talking about for a few decades. I think the challenge now is to shift to existing stock. You know, we have this huge problem. We can't get to net zero unless we decarbonise heating buildings. I'm right now working with a team within Innovate UK as we think about what a net zero strategy might look like, what our longer term plans might be. Innovate UK has been around for 15 years. We're thinking, what's the world going to look like in another 15 years? Which takes us to roughly the end of the sixth carbon budget, by which stage, you know, we have to pretty much, you know, I think we'll have to be certainly 3/4 of the way towards having fully decarbonised the housing stock and our buildings. That's a massive challenge. That's a massive opportunity for the sector. I think the skills pressure is big now. There's even more to come. But where do we play a role in that? You know, everyone's got a part in that. Where can Innovate UK most usefully leverage its investments? And I say that very clearly because, you know, ideally, you know, when all else fails, we'll give you a grant. Really, a lot of what we're trying to do is, with our investments, is help shift systems in the way that we have done with transforming construction. So it's how do we work with the energy that's already there and help it go faster. It's always about removing barriers so things move faster.
I think just on before we move to Keith and Sam on that one, I think what's really interesting about that, Mike, is that it puts us, that we can already see that we're moving towards that space of non-domestic retrofit and the importance of what we do with that existing building stock. And what's really exciting from the perspective of what's next for you guys from our perspective is being able to demonstrate impact in terms of impact to people's lives, people's homes, the places people work, the cities people occupy. You know, that's where we really start to see that affect the fabric of our environment.
Well, of course, net zero energy, net zero heat couldn't be more in the news right now, of course, because, you know, with the reliance on Russian gas and how do we become energy independent, how do we get that energy security, and with the rising costs of just heating your home, it's at the forefront of people's minds. So again, it's a real opportunity for the sector to say, look, we've got the answers, we can do it quickly, we can make your lives better. It's patriotic. It's patriotic to insulate your home. It's patriotic to get a heat pump.
Sam, what's next?
I think that I'm a great optimist. Obviously, it'll come across. I think we're on the right track here, but at the same time, we've presented all this proof that there are better ways of doing things. Government procurement is pulling that through and so forth. But inevitably, there's going to be people who are kind of thinking, well, let's see how this plays out. Let's see whether this really does work. And that requires that critical mass, that tipping point of people to get on board with these techniques, because there's absolutely no doubt that they do work if they're applied properly. So I think what we need to see is some real business success coming out of all these changes. The market capitalization of businesses in the construction sector is really puny. It's really, really small, and it's because of these low margins and this dysfunctional nature of the industry that we've had. But we've really unlocked that, and what I think we will see is some really successful businesses that people are going to be impressed by. Possibly some sort of unicorn SME types, possibly some of the bigger players becoming a lot more successful and valuable. And, that really attracting the talent and building up momentum within the industry. So, I think that's what's next. I think that I always caution, and Mike is the same, and caution against the industry sort of looking to grant funding and so forth as the panacea, or as the thing that's really going to feed the fuel for the fire. It's different now. The baton has to be picked up by the industry, and we need to see some really exciting results coming from that. But I think it's eminently possible, and indeed, almost inevitable that will happen.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think, from the Construction Innovation Hub's perspective, we have some short-term objectives. We have another 6 months of our programme where we have a number of crucial outputs that need to come through. So later this month, we'll get the first draft of the platform rulebook out. In June, we'll be publishing the next steps of the Value Toolkit. We're looking at the legacy homes, things like the UK BIM framework and the global BIM network. So the solutions, the processes, the tools developed have a life beyond the end of the funded programme. But I think, if we look at some of the broader issues that must be addressed, and let's take as read the requirement for industry and government to continue to collaborate and not to go off and revert to time. But if we're brutally honest at the moment, if we have the technical solutions and we have the right supportive policy and regulatory environment, we don't yet have the capability and capacity in the UK market to service all of that need when it comes through. So that really is a requirement for us to think about: how do we build capability and capacity? How do we develop the people that are in the industry? How do we retain the people and retrain those that are currently working with us? And how do we attract that new talent in? So it'll be a dreadful shame if we had the right technical solution and someone who wanted to buy it and we had no one here to deliver it. And at the moment we're seeing I think an accelerating shift towards digital to manufacturing, and we need to make sure we've got that capability and capacity and skills here in the UK market to be able to service that, so we can really take advantage as a society of the outputs that have come from the challenge. So I think there's a longer term focus on building capability and capacity, so we're able to respond. And much of that, picking up Mike's point from earlier, it's looking at how we can apply those skills and attract that talent, and look at the existing stock. 99.5% of the infrastructure we're going to have in the UK next year is already here. So how do we address not just the housing stock, but the existing infrastructure stock? How do we make sure we are able to do it in a way that supports social value, supports UK businesses, supports a path to net zero? Looking at capability and capacity, not in how many more bricklayers or plasterers do we need, but those new skills around digital, around manufacturing, around assembly, that really are going to be crucial to be able to deliver the transformed sector that we aspire to.
So we've heard that reverberation, that call to action from all three of you. I guess as we come to sort of the end of our time on the podcast together, people are going to be wondering, how do they get involved? What should they check out? What should they be reading? What should they be signing up to or subscribing to? Or what should they be following? I suppose just from each of you, where would you direct people?
Well, obviously, you just follow me on Twitter. That's @Pinso. As I said earlier, if you go to ukri.org/TCC, there we've got the outputs from the challenge. We've got a brochure which details every single investment we made. There's also a link to the story catalogue, which breaks down the story behind every investment. And you can take that and build new stories, to tell the stories you want around the themes that are important for you. There's a pretty good video, which I think over 10 minutes shows you the full breadth of what we invested in. And we're really proud of this. There's not a single second of stock footage in that whole video. This is actually what happened on our projects, to give you an idea of the kind of breadth. And I think there's some wonderful moments in there, even video interviews from people who are actually living in some of the homes that we've kind of funded under this program. And last of all, there's a kind of impact report there, which gives you some idea as to what the programme overall achieved. I think you need to have a link through to our event from a couple of weeks ago where the minister talked, and you can get a fuller appreciation of overall what happened in the challenge. So that's how you can really learn what we've done.
Cool. Keith?
I'd echo to Mike's call to have a look at the video on the UKRI website. That'd be worth a view to see that breadth of achievements over the last 4 years. Obviously, you can go to the Construction Innovation Hub website as well, which has the opportunity to get involved in, and receive all the updates and newsletters. But outside the challenge, I'd also encourage people to have a look at the Construction Leadership Council's plan for 2022. It's a look back on 2021 and what's coming next. So that gets a breadth of views, the innovation that's being delivered across the challenge through UKRI, some of the specific things that are still coming from the Construction Innovation Hub, and that broader industry view from the Construction Leadership Council. With those together, that should give you a good rounded picture of what's happened and what we think should be happening next.
Cool. And Sam, anything more to add?
Well, it's been covered very well. I mean, I think I would emphasise the construction playbook and the tech roadmap for 2030. So, this is the government laying out what it wants from the industry, and provides a lot of good guidance for what to focus on and how to exploit the opportunities that are out there for the industry.
Cool. And we always end the podcast, guys, look into the future. I'm going to put you all on the spot here. I really want that soundbite from you all on the future of construction innovation. What do we want to see from the future of construction innovation? I'm going to throw Keith straight on the spot here and go to Keith.
Well, I think I'd like to see sustainable, ethical, innovative and productive UK businesses, but who are employing people from a much more diverse and inclusive perspective, because I think we, as an industry, don't necessarily reflect the society we serve in our workforce. So I think rather than trying to persuade people that unattractive jobs are attractive, let's make attractive jobs attractive to the best talent. So move away from that analog, manual, wasteful careers to digital, productive, sustainable. That's what I'd like to see.
Excellent. Mike, construction innovation.
Well, I think it's all about who's using those buildings and who's using that built environment, that infrastructure. How you're making their lives better. That focus, I think the focus is shifting towards that. It needs to be about that.
And Sam?
I just want the industry to waste no time, no energy and no materials in delivering beautiful and sustainable buildings.
I couldn't have said that better from our three guests today. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure, and the time has literally flown. Thanks for your riveting conversation.
So Oliver, that was absolutely fascinating, especially to look back at those 4 years of the Transforming Construction Challenge, and also just giving us a glimpse into what's coming in the future.
I'm really excited about what's next for UKRI, especially given that big funding bump that they've received, and the plans that Keith outlined for where the Construction Innovation Hub is going to be focusing its energy over the coming years. So some amazing comments there from Keith, Mike and Sam, and look forward to catching up with those guys again pretty soon.
And so what's next up for us on the FutureX podcast?
I think we've got to catch up with the guys from the Big Innovation Pitch final.
Yeah.
Let's get chatting to those. Let's introduce them to the audience and talk about some of those amazing innovations that we judged.
Absolutely. And also just a little bit of a sort of a shameless plug here for Futurebuild, but you can watch all of our conference sessions now on demand. So just go to the Futurebuild website, which is futurebuild.co.uk, and you can access all of this year's conference on demand. And also, if you like the podcast, please share and subscribe.
Join our community to stay up to date with all things FutureX. Visit futurebuild.co.uk to sign up. Please also like them and share them to help grow our community. You can subscribe to the podcasts within your favourite podcast platform. Thanks so much for listening, and we hope you'll be back again soon.